I hadn't set foot in my grandmother's village for over a decade. But even before the car's tires crunched onto that gravel drive, I could feel the old hush pressing in through the windows like a weight I'd once shrugged off too easily, now rolling back to settle on my chest. The sun was dipping behind the pines, casting wine-dark shadows between the trunks, and a distant mist curled along the ridge. I closed my eyes, let the roar of the engine fade. Out here, the nearest gas station was 20 minutes down a rutted dirt road. It occurred to me, with a strange frisson, that today I might regret my parents' idea of disconnecting. I stepped out onto the porch, inhaled that familiar scent, damp pine needles, rotted leaves, and something else I couldn't name, something tangy, almost metallic. Grandma stood by the rocking chair, its old slats creaking in the evening breeze. She smiled, the way she always did, warm brown eyes, hair pulled into a tight bun. In her palm she held a key, heavy and brass, its teeth crooked like the branches overhead. "This place is yours tonight," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I'm staying with Mrs. Marjorie down the lane. Don't worry, you'll be fine." I slid the key into my pocket and nodded, though my mouth felt dry. "Thanks, Grandma." I should have argued, asked why she wasn't staying. But the key weighed too much, and the dusk felt too watchful. I climbed the steps, set my bag against the doorframe. Inside, the kitchen lantern flickered, sputtering like a match in a storm. The old TV in the corner sputtered static blue-white noise that clawed at the dark. I dropped my bag and peeled off my jacket, heart still tapping against my ribs. At 8 o'clock, the village surrendered completely to night. No cicadas, no barking dogs, not even the whisper of wind through the trees. It felt like the world had exhaled and gone still. I crossed to the window and peered out. Nothing. The gnarled birch trunk that leaned against the kitchen wall swayed in absolute calm. I pressed my forehead against the glass, tracing the outline of the yard. Somewhere behind me, the house settled, wood contracting, maybe, but it sounded almost like a groan. I shrugged, forced a laugh. "I'm just spooked," I muttered, wiping a fog of breath off the pane. In the corner, the TV's static deepened into a low hum. I flicked it off. Better to read, I thought. I found Grandma's old paperback on the shelf, some 1950s pulp horror about a haunted lighthouse. Perfect. I flipped open the book at 10:30, curled up on the sagging couch. The pages smelled of mildew and ash. One chapter in, the words danced and blurred. My eyelids began to droop. I had no intention of staying up, but sleep felt like surrender. My mind buzzed. What if something's out there? I chided myself. It was just the silence messing with my head. At midnight, I woke to a whisper. Not a word, just a hiss like air escaping a cracked pipe. I sat bolt upright, the book falling to my lap. The sound came again, faint but definite. Drip, drip, drip. Water. No. It was too slow, too deliberate. My pulse punched at my throat. I grabbed the flashlight from the table and stood. The beam trembled as I shone it on the far wall. There, a thin line of water creeping down the plaster? No, it wasn't water. It was a pale smear 5 inches long, like someone had pressed a finger there. I ran the light along the room. Every window was sealed. Every crack was mortar. Drip. The sound moved dancing down the hall. I swallowed. Hello. My voice sounded hollow. The flashlight clicked off. I cursed, hit the side until it sputtered back to life. I backed toward the kitchen door, heart thumping so hard I thought I'd see it in my eyes. The kitchen windows, 6 of them, glowed black. I raised the light, illuminating the handles, all locked, just as Grandma said. And yet, one window latch was turned the wrong way. It faced down instead of up. I crept closer, breathing through my mouth. My hand closed around the latch. It was warm. I'd never been warm. A draft wound around my ankles, whispers brushing my ears. I stood with the flashlight trained on the glass. Outside, the yard looked empty. But the latch stuck under my palm, refusing to budge. I yanked. With a final creak, the window swung in. I stumbled back, and the smell hit me something earthy, feral, like rot and wet fur. A breeze breached in, carrying the taste of moss and decay. The first star shivered in the sky, invisible behind the smoke of pine. I slammed the window shut, slammed the latch up. My knuckles stung. My mind screamed, "Get out! Get out!" But I didn't move. The house was too quiet now, as if offended that I'd disturbed its secret. 10 minutes later, I sat on the couch again, trembling. My hands shook like leaves in a storm. I tried to steady my breath, in, out, count to 5. But sleep had left the building. My ears were alive to every creak and pop. Then, tap. Soft, deliberate, like someone rapping on glass. My head snapped toward the living room window. Outside, there was nothing, just the empty deck and the woods beyond. Another tap. Slow. I stood, chest tight, and edged forward. Light from my torch schemed the frame. No figure. No branches. Just the pane. Tap. My thumb hovered over the window. I pressed my palm against the cold glass. The beat stopped. Silence. I exhaled. "This is insane," I murmured, stepping back. But as I turned, the window next to it rattled like a palm slapped against it from the outside. My spine went cold. The beam from my flashlight shook and dipped. And then, tap, 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 3 sharp knocks in perfect rhythm. My phone sat on the side table, screen cracked, battery at 6%. I fumbled for it, hit lights, but the lamp didn't come on. It sputtered and died. I yanked the plug, the cord felt slick in my hand, as if coated with oil. I clicked the flashlight back on. The beam caught the edge of the curtain on the sliding door. It fluttered, though there was no breeze. My breath hitched. I peered closer, the fabric shifted. Then, abruptly, it hung still. I raised a trembling hand to pull it aside, but the beam flickered out again. Panic clawed at me. I dropped to my knees, rummaged in the bag for matches. My fingers closed around a small box. I struck one, little sparks, and light. A golden glimmer danced on the walls. I scanned the room. Everything looked normal. Chairs, table, an old radio. Then, from behind me, a scraping sound like fingernails on wood. A low, resonant scratch from the kitchen door. My heart seized. I swallowed. I was supposed to be alone here. Grandma was at Mrs. Marjorie's. No one else should have a key. Match in hand, I edged toward the doorway. The kitchen lay beyond. My eyes widened as I saw footprints in the dusty floor, bare, elongated, toes splayed like a spider's legs. They started at the counter and led toward the back door. The wood beneath those prints looked fresh, darker than the rest of the floorboards. Someone had stepped in something wet. I clicked off the match, the darkness swallowed me. I pressed myself against the door frame and closed my eyes. What am I doing? But my feet moved of their own accord toward the lock. I twisted it. It turned. I yanked the door open. Moonlight poured in, outlining a figure hunched by the sink. Its back was toward me, shoulders too narrow, arms too long. It seemed to sway, as if undecided. A shadow unreeling behind it. I lifted the flashlight. The beam cut across the stranger's back. Pale skin. Scars. No, those were scratches, hundreds of fine lines, crisscrossing like a grotesque map. The thing's head snapped up. My stomach lurched. It had no eyes, holes where eyes should be, dark and endless. A gaping mouth carved into its face, lips peeled back in a grin that stretched too wide. It tilted its head, as if curious. Then its mouth opened, no sound, just a wet gape, and it lunged. I stumbled back, tripping over a mat, slamming my hip against the counter. Pain shot through me, but I scrambled to my feet and bolted for the front door. My bag tumbled behind me, matches spilling. I burst through the front door and into a slap of cold night air. The porch light was long dead, so my only guide was the sliver of moon hanging low above the treetops. In the gravel driveway behind me, I could hear the creature's ragged breathing, low, guttural, as if its chest were collapsing with every inhalation. My legs burned but kept moving, mile after mile of horror wound through every cell in my body. Halfway between the porch and the tree line, I realized I hadn't grabbed my jacket or my phone. My fingers brushed against the brass key in my pocket, Grandma's key, warm and strange, as though it had been held by someone else after she'd handed it off. I didn't stop to inspect it. Instinct screamed, "Run!" Behind me, the creature snarled and broke into a frantic, loping chase. Its gait was all wrong, a series of jolts and spasms that propelled it forward in bursts. Every time it closed the distance, I heard the sickening scrape of its claws against the wooden boards of the house, and then a shriek so inhuman that my lungs nearly gave out. I plunged into the woods. The path was hardly more than a deer trail, twisting roots, thorny underbrush, the odd flash of reflective eyes that belonged to whatever small animal called this place home. The air was thick with the smell of pine resin and damp oak, and my breath came out in ragged plumes. At one point, I tripped over a root and tumbled forward, slamming into a mossy log. Pain fucking exploded across my shin, but I forced myself up and kept going. Turning around, I saw the creature's silhouette weaving through the trees, like a nightmare skipping from branch to branch. I didn't know where I was headed, just away from the house. The map in my head dissolved into a blur of dark trunks and shifting shadows. Every time a branch cracked under my weight, I expected it to be its claws reaching out, dragging me back into the forest's hungry grasp. But then the trees thinned. Moonlight pooled in front of me, illuminating the old stone well that sat at the edge of Grandma's property. She'd always told me never to go near it, that it was dangerous, but she never said why. Tonight, I didn't have the luxury of histrionics. I skidded to a halt beside the well, chest heaving, hand pressed against my bleeding shin. Behind me, the creature paused in the clearing, like a shark scenting blood. I clutched the key tighter. An idea flickered. I'd heard Grandma whisper something about binding the dark once, but I'd dismissed it as superstition. Now it felt like a lifeline. The well's mouth yawned black, and an ancient rope ladder dangled into the darkness below. If this forest wanted to swallow me whole, then I'd jump before it got a chance. Maybe there was a tunnel, maybe an old mining shaft, anything to put space between us. I took a deep breath, turned, and leaped. I fell for what felt like forever. My arms scraped against damp stones, and debris drifted past me like lazy ghosts. Finally, the ladder shuddered beneath my weight, and I landed with a splash in cold, murky water. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and I floundered, coughing up brackish fluid. By moonlight filtering down the shaft, I saw I was in a narrow tunnel maybe 8 feet across, with walls slick with algae. The ceiling dripped with water that glinted like liquid silver. I kicked to shore, clawing at the mud until I found solid ground. My clothes were soaked, heavy as armor, but I didn't care. Every second above ground meant the creature was closer, its sulphurous breath swirling just beyond the mouth of the well. I stumbled forward, following the tunnel's gentle incline. Above me, the ladder bounced, and somewhere in the well the creature's snarl echoed downward. I pressed my back to the damp wall, listening. It scratched at the opening for a heartbeat, then silence. I risked a peek upward, nothing but darkness. I exhaled, wiped water out of my eyes, and forced myself to keep moving. After what seemed like miles, thousands of heartbeats, the tunnel opened into a cavern. Moonlight streamed in through cracks in the ceiling, illuminating ancient carvings etched into the stone. Strange symbols, spirals and circles, all surrounding a central emblem that looked identical to the brass key I still clutched. A chill ran down my spine. This place had been built for something, someone to lock away a terror. The ground beneath me trembled. My eyes darted to the chamber's entrance. A pair of glowing red dots hovered in the darkness beyond. The creature had found me. I scrambled backward, crashing into a pile of rocks. Pain flared across my ribs. The creature stepped through the stone arch, its features more vivid now in the filtered moonlight. Jagged scars traced its torso, its mouth riding up into a crooked snarl. It raised a clawed hand and mirrored my mortal terror with a curious glide of its fingers through the air. Instinct took over. I held up the key, feeling its warmth thrum into my palm. The carvings on the walls glowed faintly. The creature hissed, a sound like steam escaping a kettle. I didn't hesitate. I lunged forward, driving the key into the central emblem on the carvings. The moment metal met stone, the chamber shook. A pulse of cold wind swept through, extinguishing the meager moonlight. In the pitch black, I heard the creature scream an unholy, soul-shaking howl that reverberated through the earth. The walls vibrated like a struck drum, and the tunnel behind me collapsed with a deafening roar. I stumbled forward, away from the epicenter of chaos. A rumbling grew into a roar as cracks raced across the cavern ceiling. I smelled ozone and sulfur. Something massive shifted in the dark. I scrambled over boulders, blood dribbling down my temple, every nerve on fire. Behind me, a bone-deep thud as the creature charged. At the edge of the cavern, I found a narrow fissure barely wide enough for a person. I shoved my shoulder into the crack and wriggled through, collapsing onto cold earth on the other side just as the chamber imploded in a maelstrom of dust and stone. I woke to birdsong. My head throbbed so intensely it felt like a jackhammer. The forest stretched out before me, bathed in an innocent pink light. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves, carrying the promise of morning. For a moment, I believed it was all a nightmare. Then I noticed the key in my hand still warm, still pulsing. And the tunnel entrance behind me, blocked by an impossible mound of rubble. I pressed my ear to the wall. Silence. No creature's breath, no echo of stone on stone. I staggered to my feet, knees buckling. My hands patted my pockets and thighs. Phone, jacket, no, they were gone. My shirt was entangled with mud, and my shoes felt like lead slugs. But I'd escaped. I didn't know how far I'd wandered by the time I saw the dirt road again. A pair of headlights cut through the trees, Grandma's old pickup. She jumped out, small frame stiff with worry. "You made it," she cried, hugging me tight. Her eyes gleamed not with relief, but sorrow. I felt tears stinging my own eyes. "What happened?" I rasped. She turned away, studying the tree lean. "Some things," she said quietly, "are older than we are. I should have told you, but I promised him I'd protect you." I frowned. "Him?" Grandma only shook her head. "Come on. Let's get you home." Back in the car, I cradled a steaming mug of coffee while Grandma drove in silence. The road was empty, the dawn light soft and unthreatening. Yet the key lay heavy under my palm, a reminder that some doors, once opened, can never truly close. "Why did you give me the key?" I finally asked. She glanced at me, shadows in her eyes. "Because it chose you. The village needed someone brave enough to face the dark. Tonight, you did more than run, you bounded." I stared at the highway rushing by. "Is it gone?" "Not gone," she said. "Just contained, for now." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Silence can be safe, but only when we remember what hides in it." I nodded, though I couldn't shake the echo of that final scream. Outside, the world seemed calm, too calm. Somewhere in the forest, something waited. And I knew, deep down, that one day, the key would call to me again. But for now, the night's hush had been bought with blood and terror. And as the sun rose higher, I realized, silence was never just the absence of sound. It was a living thing, hungry, patient, and always listening. I was 14 the summer my parents sent me to our ancestral village in Punjab. I remember stepping off the rickety bus into a world that felt suspended in time. No Wi-Fi, no cell signal, only sun-baked paths and the electric hum of cicadas. My only connection to home was the figure waiting at the gate, my cousin Aram, 3 years older, grinning with all the conspiratorial delight of someone who'd just discovered the best secret in the world. That secret would cost me everything. The dawn I arrived was a wash of pale gold across the dusty fields. My suitcase thumped against my calf as I trudged toward my uncle's compound, passing weathered mud brick huts and mango trees heavy with fruit. Every breath tasted like scorched earth. Aram danced ahead, barefoot, his laughter floating back to me like a song I used to know. He threw an arm around my shoulders. "Welcome home," he said, voice soft yet charged with something I couldn't name. His eyes glittered, flint sharp. "You ready for summer adventures?" I forced a smile. At home in California, adventure meant arcades or water parks. Here, the air smelled of sour milk and jasmine. Adventure meant something else entirely. Inside the courtyard, Lalu and Jagjit, 2 boys from the neighborhood, eyed me like I'd dropped from the sky. They were wiry, quick-tempered, and always hungry for trouble. We exchanged nods. No one asked about Wi-Fi. No one cared about Snapchat. My aunt bustled in with a tray of steaming chai. The spice and sweet milk made my chest tighten. Family chatter rolled around me in Punjabi, jokes about city life, laughter at mismatched clothes. I felt like an outsider, but Aram's presence anchored me. That afternoon, we chased goats through the fields. I climbed the tallest mango tree I could find, heart thundering as I reached into the boughs for the ripest fruit. Aram showed me how to gauge the fall below so I wouldn't break my leg. When I slipped and nearly fell, his hand caught mine. "You'll be fine," he said, steadying me. His grip lingered, and in his eyes, I glimpsed a flicker of something darker, almost calculating. I shook it off. It was summer. We were cousins on an adventure. The evening sky bled from orange into purple. Lanterns glowed in every courtyard, casting molten shadows on cracked walls. I sat outside my uncle's house, sipping cold water, listening to crickets hum like distant engines. Aram approached, silhouette elongated in lamplight. "I have a game for us," he announced, voice low. I raised an eyebrow. "Hide and seek again?" He nodded. But with a twist. He laid out the rules in a hush. At the old mosque's east wall, I'd count to 30. Then, within the broad boundary of fields, courtyards, and the grove beyond the well, everyone would hide. No lights, no noise. Last one found would be the seeker next. Simple. My pulse quickened. At home, darkness was tame, just street lights and porch bulbs. Here, dark was a living thing. I pressed my forehead to the cool bricks of the mosque and covered my eyes. 1, 2, 3, my breath puffed out in small clouds. Behind me, ominous laughter. A twig snapped. Something brushed my shoulder. 27, 28, my heart hammered. I yanked off my blindfold. Lanterns bobbed far away. Grass swayed, empty air. Then, a laugh as low as wind through reeds, right beside me. I spun, only shadows. "Ready or not," I called, voice small in the vast night. Aram's laugh echoed from just beyond the lantern glow. I ran, sweeping the beam across grass, hyacinth blooms, the broken cover of the well. No sign until I caught movement at the grove's edge. He stepped into the light, shirt clinging to him, bare feet. He swayed, smile wide and still. And then, he turned and walked away, leaving me alone with my racing heart. That night, I slept under the mango tree in the courtyard. The air was cool, but sleep eluded me. I dreamed of Aram without eyes, black hollows that swallowed moonlight. He beckoned me into the grove. "Come play," he whispered, voice like dry leaves. I jolted awake to silence. My lantern lay shattered on the dirt, glass shards glittering like broken stars. I bolted upright. No Aram. No Lalu. No Jagjit. Just the hush of night and distant cicadas. Morning arrived too late. At breakfast, my stomach churned as I watched my uncle worry over Aram's absence. Lalu and Jagjit shook their heads, nothing found in the fields beyond the well. Aram's footprints had led us to the mossy stones of the old well, then vanished. Tonight, we swore, we'd find him. We lit dozens of lanterns and fanned out across the rice paddies and the grove. The Indian summer sun beat down, and sweat stung my eyes as I searched every mango trunk, every burrow. Nothing but the echo of my own footsteps. Evening fell, and villagers gathered near the well. Faint chanting rose, Punjabi prayers, desperate offerings. Rice and flower petals danced on the breeze before sinking into the black water. I cocked my head, as if I might hear Aram's voice ripple up. Nothing. As the elderly recited blessings, the water in the well stirred. Ripples spread, though we cast nothing in. A low groan vibrated against the stone. I clutched my uncle's arm. He glanced at me, eyes wide with superstition and sorrow. Then the lanterns flickered. A cold wind snaked through the courtyard. The rippling stopped. Silence swallowed us. Aram was gone. The village slipped into a haze of fear. Mothers barred doors at dusk, children huddled inside. Lalu and Jagjit wandered the fields at dawn, empty cups of chai in hand, haunted expressions on their sunburned faces. I stayed close to the well, sure I'd hear the faintest whisper. Each night, I dreamt of that voice, hide. Seek. I woke soaked in sweat, dawn light slicing across my eyes. On the fourth night, I followed a silhouette through the grove. Blade-sharp leaves brushed my legs. My lantern's beam cut a slender path ahead. I froze at a clearing, footprints bare, muddy, leading away. Then laughter. Soft. Close. A shape flickered behind a mango trunk. Aram. "Don't be afraid," he said, stepping into the beam. But his eyes were obsidian voids. "Aram." I stammered. He tilted his head. "Come find me," he whispered, then vanished. I chased his footprints until they halted at the broken well cover. I nearly fell in, caught only by the rope. I scrambled out, heart pounding, and raced back through the trees, every shadow morphing into a thing that might swallow me whole. By the fifth night, I couldn't stand still. I brandished 2 lanterns and crossed the courtyard alone, following whispers in the wind. I pressed my ear to the well's rim. Water dripped below, rhythmic, mocking. A breeze carried my name. I leapt back, eyes wide. No one. On the 7th night, the village elders assembled around the well again. Incense curled in silver spirals. Old songs rose and fell, prayers spilled into the darkness. I stood beside my uncle, clutching his rough sleeve, my lantern's light trembling. All at once, the candles flickered out. A stillness deeper than silence filled the air. Then a ripple raced across the well's oily surface. A groan like metal scraping bone echoed up from the depths. I stumbled back as a pale arm broke the water line, followed by a torso, then shoulders. And finally, Aram climbed over the rim, mud-choked and soaked, his shirt clinging to him like a second skin. He stood in the lantern glow, skin glistening, chest heaving, but his eyes were too still, fixed, unblinking. He offered that crooked grin. "Brother," he said. The voice echoed, as if louder underground. "You found me." My uncle lunged forward. Aram recoiled, dust rising from his ankles. A wind whipped through the courtyard, snuffing lanterns. In the pitch dark, I heard my uncle's shout, then crashing. Lanterns relit themselves, sputtering back to life. Aram lay on the ground, chest rising and falling. He blinked once, slow and weighty, then whispered, "I was down there." Every villager backed away, murmuring about jinns and curses. Lalu whimpered. Jagjit shook so hard I thought he'd collapse. That evening, Aram sat by the fire in the courtyard, eyes glazed. Children dared not pass him, lanterns were placed strategically to keep his figure in light. I hovered at his side, unwilling to leave him. From the grove's edge, I saw them, two silhouettes moving in near-perfect unison among the mango trees. Their heads tilted, faces half-lit by lantern glow. I froze. One stepped forward, a mirror image of Aram, save for the way his limbs flexed too smoothly, too deliberately. The other lingered, half-hidden behind a low branch. They whispered in a voice that sent chills down my spine, "Hide. Seek. Or we'll find you." Aram watched them silently, head cocked as if listening to a private melody. He half smiled. "They're teaching me a new game," he murmured, voice barely above breath. My blood ran cold. I grabbed his arm. "We have to leave now." He shook me off, turning toward the shadows. "Will you come, or will you hide?" His gaze locked on mine, obsidian pits in a porcelain face. Then he strode into the grove, the two shapes gliding behind him like dark wings. That night, every lantern burned low. I sat in my room, facing the open door. The breeze carried the scent of damp earth and mango blossoms, a sweet, cloying perfume that made my throat seize. Outside, leaves rustled in a slow count, 1, 2, 3. My heart pounded. I crept across the hall, slipping outside. The courtyard was empty except for my uncle's unlit lamps. I knew where to go: the well, the grove, the field where it all began. I approached the well. My lantern's beam trembled across the black water. A voice drifted from the darkness. "Ready or not?" I swallowed. "I'm here." Laughter, distant yet all around. Footsteps crunching. My skin crawled. I followed the sound into the grove, lantern held high. Shadows flickered between trunks, 3, then 4, then more. Each face was Aram's, pale, mud-streaked, grin splitting cheek to cheek, obsidian eyes unblinking. They circled me, chanting, "Hide. Seek. Hide. Seek." I backed toward the well, heart hammering. One shadow lunged, hands cold as gravestone, grasping at me. I stumbled, lantern skittering across earth. Light skittered up onto twisted faces. I screamed and dove into the well's murky water just as I had imagined in every nightmare. The wind rushed past my ears. Then water closed overhead, cold and viscous, and everything went black. When I surfaced, I was sinking in mud. Two figures hovered above, Aram and his double. They stared down, faces inches from mine. Obsidian eyes studied me like prey. "Now we hide," Aram whispered, and his double echoed, "Now we hide." Pain seared my head. I thrashed, arms flailing, and broke free. I scrambled up the slick stones, gasping air, and hauled myself onto the rim. My lantern lay broken at the bottom, useless. I ran, legs pumping, lungs burning, toward a pinprick of lantern light at the courtyard edge. Behind me, laughter chased my feet, dozens of soft, echoing voices chanting, "Hide. Seek. Hide. Seek." I burst into the courtyard and slammed the main gate shut. I turned the lock, pressed my ear to the wood, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the crickets. Silence. At first light, I crept from the house. The courtyard was deserted, no lanterns lit, no footprints in the dirt. My uncle, Lalu, and Jagjit lay asleep on mats, expression slack. Aram's mat lay empty, untouched. I raced across the field to the well. Its cover was gone, and the rope dangling into darkness was frayed. No blood, no body, just the whisper of wind through the groves. I sank to my knees, hands pressed to the earth, chest heaving. The mango trees loomed, silent witnesses. I could almost hear the whispers of my own name drifting through the leaves. That evening, my uncle stumbled outside, eyes rimmed red. "He's gone," he whispered. "All of them, gone." I nodded numbly. The village was emptying, families packing carts, driving off in tractors, leaving behind lanterns, weaving through fields as though haunted by what they'd seen. I stayed behind, alone, determined to unearth the truth. I gathered ropes and tools and climbed into the well at dawn. The stones were slick, the water stagnant. I waded in up to my knees, then plunged deeper, each handhold slick with ancient moss. At the bottom, I found a narrow tunnel carved into the rock, hidden behind loose stones. Heart pounding, I squeezed through. The air smelled of rot and forgotten things. The tunnel opened into a cavern lit by phosphorescent moss, walls glimmering with damp mineral veins. In the center lay 4 mats, my uncle's, Lalu's, Jagjit's, and one I recognized instantly, my own battered mat from the courtyard. Beside them, a small altar of cracked clay pots and rusted coins. Footsteps echoed behind me. I whipped around, no one. Just the hush of dripping water. My breath caught. Then a whisper. "Game over." Aram stepped from the shadows, face half in darkness. His eyes glowed obsidian. Next to him stood 2 more silhouettes exact as his twin. They formed a row like sentinels. I lifted a trembling lantern I'd lit at the tunnel's mouth. Its flame painted their faces in silver. Aram's lips parted in that crooked grin. "Now we all hide," he said, voice a chorus of 3. "But only one can seek." My heart froze. I realized then, the game wasn't meant to end. It was meant to claim us one by one, drag us into the well, into that hidden world beneath the grove, and leave nothing but echoes in the village above. I turned and ran, scrambling up the slick tunnel walls. Shouts and laughter bounced behind me. I burst out into sunlight and tumbled onto the grass. My uncle's figure loomed above me, tears streaming down his face. "Run," he panted. "Get help." I didn't look back. I raced across the fields toward the road, voice hoarse as I screamed for passing vehicles. A tractor appeared, its horn blaring. I dove in front of the tires, hands outstretched. The driver slammed on the brakes, and I hurled myself into the cab. As we sped away, I looked back. The village lay quiet under the rising sun. No clouds of dust, no sign of carts leaving, just the abandoned courtyard and its silent well, waiting for the next seeker. I never returned to that village. My uncle, Lalu, and Jagjit, if they survived, became ghosts in my memory, echoing laughter in empty fields. Aram. I don't know what happened to him. Some say he wanders the mango groves at midnight, leading new travelers to the well. Others claim his double now drifts alone, hunting for seekers. All I know is when the wind rustles through my childhood home's screens, I hear a faint whisper. Hide. Seek. And I pray I will never hear the rest.